Let's spruce up these side tables. Nice solid wood, but that orange just has to go. So I start by using my crud cutter, and I'm cleaning everything really well, because a lot of times with side tables especially, people put a lot of furniture polish on them and it just creates a lot of buildup. So I clean it all off before I start sanding. In my mind at this point, I'm thinking I'm going to strip these and restain them or do a paint wash or something on them, and I start sanding. And what you may not be able to see here is these were intentionally weathered. So the edges, where you'd normally have a flat surface and then there's a crisp line and then that round part starts. Well, this is all kind of jagged and wobbly because it was intended to be that way. And there's also some deep gouges in the top on purpose. So I'm sanding, and I am going to get to a point where all of a sudden I decide, nope, we're not going to go this route. So it switches from I'm stripping to nope, now I'm just scuff sanding. I just couldn't do it. It just didn't seem, I could tell from when I was sanding that nope, this just isn't going to be one of those pieces that I'm going to strip and redo. I didn't care for the way the edges were, and those deep gouges, things just were not going to recover well. And I didn't think they were going to look well, being stripped. So off to scuff sanding and painting. Look at that right there. You see the transition of one idea to the next. This is probably a great beginner-friendly project, is because these are in great shape. It's really just going to be a lot of sanding, cleaning, and then priming and painting. So I've sanded the top, just getting ready to do the sides and all of the legs. There's a lot of sanding, even though these seem like really simple tables, and you certainly could do all this by hand. I was fortunate enough that my orbital is able to get into all these places and even do the curved legs. It fit in that just fine. I'm taking a sanding sponge here. This is about 100 grit sanding sponge, 100. And I'm doing all the little edges and round areas that my sander wouldn't do well with. So just the edge of the top, it is rounded here. Hopefully you can see that. And then there's some, of course, like the corners, the orbital can't get into corners, so you got to do that by hand, or come in with a surf prep or something that's square to get into those corners. I just decided to do it by hand. There are some, I call them crumb catchers, but some details there that were inset that I've decided to go ahead and get sanded as well. So speed sanding, if it only happened this fast, wouldn't that be great? Okay, everything is sanded. Of course, sometimes I just show one piece because we all know how to sand and we don't need to watch it twice. But cleaning again, I didn't necessarily need to use crud cutter at this point, but I just did it again. And now paying special attention to some of the little crevices that catch all the sand, or all the sanding dust. Set up the spray tent. This is a Wagner spray tent. This is a large tent, which means I think it's about 6 feet long, but it'll be the perfect thing to spray these in. Sometimes I set up a larger tent when I'm going to do multiple pieces or large ones, but I flipped them over and seriously, gum. I mean, who puts gum underneath the side table? So thankfully these aren't mine, so I know it wasn't one of my children. But that's got to go, because nobody wants to buy a piece of furniture that comes with free gum. I just took a putty knife and a hammer and chipped all of that off of there and then cleaned it up. But ew. Who wants that? I don't know who does that these days. Anyway, cleaned up all the gum, and I start with things like this that are real leggy, upside down. And I've got primer in my sprayer, and I'm just testing it out. I always have this piece of cardboard sitting here. I've probably painted it 40 times, but I just test out my spray, make sure it's not too heavy. It's set up on little dollies, so this is going to be like cake decorating, where you do one side and you turn. So So I'll just keep spraying and turning, and every time I turn it, it reveals new areas that need to be sprayed. So it's like underside of the legs. And I do them upside down first because there's just no way to get the bottom parts of the legs and things when they're the right side up. Isn't this always the best part when you start to see the transformation happening? Turn it around, see, even on the back legs, more revealed. Every time I turn it, like, oh, there's more to be painted on every side. All right, I think I've got everything all covered on this one. Okay, these had a chance to dry. I usually leave them for a couple hours. That was a pretty good solid coat of primer. I'm coming in with the same type of sanding sponge as I had earlier, but this one now is a 320 grit. I'm not needing to necessarily take a lot of this off, but I just want to smooth it all down. This is one of my favorite times to sand, is because nothing like getting that primer nice and smooth. So I'm going to go ahead and mix up my paint. This is a taupe color I decided to use. I'm going to I usually do about 8 ounces of paint and about an ounce or so of water. That is really an approximation because I don't really measure. I stir it up and I go, yep, I want it about that thickness. I know I should be giving some type of really useful technique advice or something right now, but there isn't much to this. It's just get the paint on, of course, nice thin layers. But, one thing about my sprayer is I do turn the dial up on the air. I'll pretty much max that out, but I really dial back the flow because I want to put on pretty thin layers. I'd rather do more coats of paint rather than really thick coats of paint. It just is a much better end result. So, the other trick is not really a trick, but using really good quality paint will keep you from having to do 3 and 4 coats. I'm going to start using my shop vac. I have a little brush attachment on there. These are felt lined. There are a couple of little thin spots here, but other than that, they are in really good condition. So I decided not to pull them all out and start over. If they were all stained and everything, I would, but they were actually in good shape. So I have flipped the tables back over. I'm putting the drawers back in. And now I have to, of course, prime and paint the top in the drawer. And while I'm doing this, of course, primer's going to get everywhere, but at least it's going to be on everything that is upright and not the underside of everything. So it'll be super easy to correct. And just some notes about spraying. You'll see I'm overlapping each pass. So feathering the edges in, it just gets things it makes things more even. All right, same thing. Primer is dry. Time to sand. Get that all nice and smooth, ready for paint. Clean it up and paint. Of course, I have a little extra paint to do because of the overspray from the primer, but easy to do from this perspective. We're going to paint and spin. The reason I think these are really a good beginner-friendly set to do is just not a lot of tools involved, nothing super specialized. Not that there's not a lot of work to do just because of all the details on the bottom, but just takes time. Okay, now I'm going to paint the edges of the drawer. So I like to paint with the drawers in, and then I pull them out and just clean up the edges. Super easy. These have had a primer coat and 2 coats of paint, and now it's time for top coat. So I just dump out my paint. I get out any remaining paint in there that I can that's just gathered in the bottom, but I'm gonna leave all of that in there and then put the top coat in. The reason I do this, oh, I hate pouring out of gallons. It's so scary. That first time, I just opened that gallon of top coat. But the reason I do this is because now I'm essentially tinting the top coat. And I just find it works the best. I don't worry about it being streaky or cloudy. I do it on every piece, whether it's white, black, or taupe. Just nice, even coats. I started with this one on the base already, so I'm skipping that here, and this one I still have to do everything with. I'm not going to flip this over and top coat it because I don't feel like the underside of the legs and things needs top coat. The top coat really is just for durability, and we don't use the underside of things, so I want to make sure to seal all of the areas that are going to get use and bumps, and as we go through daily lives and use the vacuum cleaner and things, they need to be durable. But after all that, here they are. I reinstalled the original hardware. Isn't this a lovely taupe color? I think it's a great neutral. Let me know what you think.